Dee-dee-dee-dum, dum, da-da-dum, dum, da-dum, dum, da-da-da-da. Dee-dee-dee-dum, dum, da-da-dum, dum, da-dum, dum, da-dum. Da-da-da-da, 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 da-da-da-da-da. Dum, da-da-da-dum, da-dum, Let me tell you a little story about a man named Andy. Hello and welcome to another episode of Breaking Mayberry, the show where we watch old television to see why your grandparents' brains are broken. I am Marty Schneider, one of your hosts.
I'm the other one, Dan Ludwig.
And we're going to get into a pretty good episode today. But before we do, I've got a couple of things I want to talk about. First off, big news. Breaking Mayberry is going to do its very first live show. We've been accepted to the Everything is Awesome / HEADstrong Comedy Festival here in Philadelphia. So Sunday, January 27th, in the afternoon, we are going to be at South Street Cinema doing our bit live. We haven't fully worked out the details of what we're doing yet, but it's going to be me. It's going to be me and Dan repping some Andy Griffith episodes in front of a live studio audience.
It's going to, we signed up for it and then realized, oh no, we have to explain an episode of a TV show to people who may not know what the Andy Griffith show even is. So
I mean, that's kind of what we do on this show, but now it's like we have people in front of us whose like faces can yell at us.
There's going to be a bunch of teens there who have never even heard of black and white television and who will mock us relentlessly.
But it's all for a good cause. It's for the HEADstrong Foundation, which raises money to take care of the basic needs of cancer patients and fulfill some of those needs that maybe their insurance doesn't cover. So it's all part of a day-long festival in Philadelphia. There's going to be a lot of other shows and some comedians there. All the details will be in the show notes and on our Twitter page and our Facebook page. If you're going to be in Philadelphia at the end of January, please come check us out and come say hi. We'll be happy to see you.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. I don't know what to alley-oop on about the live show. It's gonna rule. I'm going to We're in the family theater, so I won't be able to swear, so you can see me get a nosebleed on stage.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? They put, there are 4 venues for this, and they put all of the, like, ones that are about TV and movies and stuff in one place, which is South Street Cinema, which makes perfect sense. But we're also, like, one of the only 2, like, family-friendly, establishments. The other 2 are at bars, so everyone's going to be 21 plus.
Yeah, we forgot to tell them that I swear like a wounded pirate during recordings. So, I mean, the last time I tried to not swear, I got a really bad headache. So, I think I'm going to, like, you're going to have to get a spray bottle and just, like, spritz me every time I say fuck.
Bad! Yeah. Bad Dan!
And then just by the time we finish recording, one of my eyes is going to be, like, swollen to the size of a baseball. And I'm just going to be, like, having a nervous breakdown on stage. It's going to be great. Come and watch me maybe die.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's episode. But today we are doing Season 2, Episode 6, Opie's Hobo Friend, directed by You're Not My Real Dad, Bob Sweeney.
Guy who owns an Irish pub, even though he's technically Dutch, Bob Sweeney.
And written by a newcomer, Harvey Bullock, who I guess is taking time from convincing Commissioner Gordon that Batman's actually bad for the city.
Batman was constantly busting into the writer's room of this show to give him shit. Just like Batman was giving him really hurtful episode notes, like, this character's a little over the plate, don't you think? I feel like you could lose this entire scene. And he's just like, get out of here, Batman. Was that anything?
I don't care if it was or not. I like it.
Yeah. I hope he's a reoccurring writer so that whenever we critique his writing, we can just do it in a Batman voice.
Come for the Andy Griffith. Stay for the, like, third tier DC character mention.
Yeah. Oh, everyone knows Harvey Bullock. He's been played by Donald Logue in a major TV show now.
Oh, that's true. That's, like, honestly, I like Gotham for that. That's great casting.
Yeah, Donald Logue should never not have work after Terriers. which I
that dude rules.
That dude rules, and that show rules, and I will talk about both of those things forever, so we need to move on to the next thing before I do.
Stay tuned for our new podcast, Terriers Cast.
But our new podcast, all caps, why did you cancel Terriers? It was just getting good.
Actually, we could probably do Donald Logue's family sitcom Grounded for Life, which I will still defend.
Also a good show.
Yeah, alright, so here's the one-sentence summary of this show, the show that we're actually supposed to talk about. We don't want to do this today.
It's been like a half hour.
One-sentence summary.
You had me do notes for 2 episodes like we're going to get through one of them.
Opie befriends a drifter who proves to be a bad influence. So this episode is an episode where a hobo comes to town, played by Buddy Ebsen, who is best known for being Jed Clampett on the Beverly Hillbillies.
I mean, so the show, the episode refers to him as a hobo aggressively, and I feel a little weird saying that, just like calling someone...
He's not a hobo.
He's not, but first he's not a hobo, but it still feels like it was a dick thing I used to do, where as a kid I thought I was like being cute by calling homeless people hobos, and I'm like, so now saying it out loud always feels like a dick move. Like, it feels bad saying... It
feels like a slur, right?
Yeah, no, because it feels like... Because right now, if you call a homeless person a hobo, you're, like, cartoonifying them to make their shit not real. And so,
right.
Yeah, so it feels like I'm just dropping a slur, like...
Kind of like being as a kid, you would say, like, you got gypped out of something, or like, calling somebody a gypsy. And you didn't realize that, oh, wait, this is not a term. Like, this is an actual group of people.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, it feels like that.
It definitely feels that way. But hobo has a specific definition, or at least historically it did. The character that we see portrayed here by Buddy Ebsen is not that definition, does not fit it whatsoever.
No, as laid out in the incredible comic book Rock Candy Mountain, a hobo is someone that travels and works. They ride the rails and they perform day labor. A tramp is someone that rides the rails and doesn't work, and a bum is someone that doesn't ride the rails and doesn't work. So he's a tramp.
Yeah, specifically by these definitions, he's a tramp. Now, hobos, which are really just migrant workers, really, were pretty popular in the Great Depression. That's kind of the like peak of hobodom. And this is another one of those, it's the 1960s, but also the 1930s kind of anachronisms that happen in the Andy Griffith show. Let's go ahead and get into this, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. So we start off with that same hillside set on the other side of the lake, where Andy and Opie are going fishing. They've pulled up in the cop car, and they're unloading their fishing gear. Oh, and this should be cleared up. They're talking about how Andy's got the day off. And to be very clear, they really hammer home the point with this first little bit. Andy says, well, I think Barney can handle it. I've worked really, really hard all week, so I guess I've earned this day off. And Opie says, yeah, and I've worked hard at school, so I deserve this day off. Relaxation is a reward for hard work. You have to work is a big theme in this fucking episode. So they nail it with the first couple of lines.
Yeah, no, they establish the conceit up and early. So as this is happening, there's this figure sort of walking up behind them, little menacingly. It sort of feels like a shot out of It Follows, where he's just sort of approaching them and they don't notice. The figure comes up, and it is, what's the name of the actor?
Buddy Ebsen.
Buddy Ebsen. He walks up sort of dejected, holding a rod, sort of stoically dejected. And they ask how the fish are biting, and he says that it's really bad out there. He can't catch them even by using his magic fish talk. And then Opie, as a child, will do it, just be like, what's magic fish talk? And then he basically says, he does like a little, thing and says like, I can talk to fish. I'll coax them out of the water. And Andy just goes like, yeah, that seems like a thing that can happen. Just kind of like brushing past it. Andy asks if he's new in town. He says like, oh yeah, no, I'm just passing through. And Andy says like, okay, come see me when you come into town. We'll say hi. And then they leave. They start going towards the lake.
Pretty clear that Andy knows what this guy is and what his deal is. You know, Andy's aware. Andy's been around long enough to know a hobo when he sees one. A tramp when he sees one.
But that doesn't stop him from leaving his fucking car windows open, which is a very trusting thing to do in general, especially like near this dude, who immediately takes advantage of it, and as soon as they're out of the frame, starts rustling through their car, pulls out their bag lunch and eats their sandwiches while just like whistling and walking away. Establishes the character dynamic of he's really friendly, really charming, but is also completely a remorseless thief.
Before we get into this, I kind of want to wonder, I mentioned that this guy's known for being Jed Clampett. I always try to like say Judd Clampett, but it's Jed because it very clearly rhymes with Fed in the theme song.
He's known for playing Judd Hirsch.
He wasn't famous yet, remember. So at the same time that this was airing, the Beverly Hillbillies had only been on the air for like 2 months. On the same network, I should point out, both on CBS. So I wonder how much of this episode was just like a contractually obligated like CBS appearance. I wonder how much they were trying to get people comfortable with seeing Buddy Ebsen on their screen. And if you like him here, you're going to love him where he's like the good guy, the good kind of hillbilly on the Beverly Hillbillies. Tune in Friday. It very seems like that kind of deal. This season is full of like guest appearances like that.
Yeah.
Some of these episodes don't make any sense unless you know who the guest star is. So it dates a lot of these episodes really badly.
These shows were both part of the same push where Southerners had just started getting televisions and networks were all scrambling to sort of snatch up that demographic. So they were probably trying to latch on to the success the Andy Griffith show had and being like, you guys like this? This is working. Put the hook in, like connect this in their heads to the Beverly Hillbillies.
Between these two shows, Beverly Hillbillies, Andy Griffith, there was Hee Haw, which is probably the most famous, the Porter Wagoner Show, which introduces Dolly Parton, and there's a lot of country music on television, Petticoat Junction and Green Acres, very similar tones, and a lot of these primarily on this network, on CBS. CBS pretty much cornered the market of this until about Vietnam.
Yeah.
Till about like the 70s. We've mentioned that great Gabe Bullard essay where he just points out that as soon as All in the Family shows up, everything changes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, it should be pointed out, Andy Griffith Show is not necessarily the most successful of all of these shows, but the most successful among Southern audiences.
Yeah, probably the one that had the most, I'm going to say, societal standing, I'm going to say, probably the most influence.
Yeah, no, this was the one, because it was sort of seen as laughing with Southerners as opposed to at them, which Beverly Hillbillies and Hee Haw were sort of more of Northern shows. Yeah, because the Southerners were the butt of the joke more often.
So, back to the episode.
Okay, yeah, we were doing an episode, right.
So we go back to the jail, where Opie wanders in, and they complain about the fish, and Opie mentions maybe the fish were so hungry, that's why they took our sandwiches. And Andy lies. Andy says, well, we probably just left him at home. Andy knew what was going on there. I feel like he probably left that window open on purpose.
See, I'm confused by that, because Andy just sort of seems to blow past the missing sandwiches, and the way he interacts with the hobo later, like, I would not trust someone who had just stolen sandwiches out of my car.
I think again, this is again where that like 1960s, 1930s dynamic comes along. I feel like Andy probably has a little bit of patience and a little bit of forgiveness for somebody who lives the hobo lifestyle, probably because Andy would have grown up during the Great Depression, and probably seen hobos pretty often. So I think that he's got a little bit of patience there, but his patience wears thin real quick.
See, that didn't, I feel like he sort of didn't make the sandwich connection earlier, because like, if you pack sandwiches to go out fishing, that's your fucking lunch. Like, he literally took food out of his child's mouth. Like, that would, if you went on like a trip like that and someone stole your lunch, that would pretty much ruin the damn day.
Yeah, you would not be happy with your day, honestly.
Yeah, so I would come back from that pretty massively pissed off. And if the guy who had very clearly done it walked into the room, I might not yell at him, especially if like you were aware that like of his situation. I'm very forgiving of his situation. Definitely wouldn't invite that guy to come stay at my house.
Barney enters, and he's got our hobo friend pushing him in. He's arrested him on a vagrancy charge.
Yeah.
Said he caught him down at the train yard.
He does not say a vagrancy charge. He says a vag charge. He says, I arrested him on a vag charge. And he goes like, a what? And he goes, vagrancy. And then they just blow past that.
Oh, that one flew completely under the radar.
Yeah. No. And
a vag
a
charge.
vag charge.
I caught him on a vag discharge. He arrested him on a yeast infection.
Yeah, I didn't know why I was like, they couldn't have had that term for it back then. What fucking joke were they doing? Was it just like Barney doing unnecessary abbreviations?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It's definitely a vagina joke. Holy shit. Way to sneak that one under there, Harvey Bullock. I got mad respect for you.
Yeah, he's coming in with some heat.
All right. So he caught him at the train yard doing some vagging, and
vagging it up,
and he brings him in on vagrancy I guess because he was planning on hopping a train. That kind of seems like what Barney's gonna bring him in for. Which, by the way, if Barney had let him do that, he would have been gone, and none of this would have happened.
No, yeah. So this is the first of two absolutely horseshit arrests that Barney does, where Barney is prowling the train yard for guys who are hitching rides.
Barney is prowling the train yard for some vag. Yeah. That's right.
Where you go for a good piece of vag. The train.
Tell you what, man. And if you're down looking at the train yard, you're looking for something other than vag, my friend. That is how that goes. No one goes cruising for vag at the train yard.
He's cruising for vag at the train yard. It's the most, like, he was like, vagrancy. He was trying to leave town. And it was like, and he really emphasized, like, this motherfucker was trying to leave. How dare he? I arrested him.
And then the second time he arrests, our friend, his friend has a name, by the way, David Brown. Mr. Dave is what they call him. The second time he arrests Mr. Dave, it's for loitering. Yeah. And Mr. Dave, our hobo friend, even points out, like, I don't want to break the law, but you're bringing me in for anything anyway. If I leave, if I move, then I'm vagrant. And if I stay still, then I'm loitering. What do you want me to do?
All right, so this is as good a point as any to really discuss a specific thing. Does Mr. Dave rule? My feelings on this man changed so many times over the course of a single episode. Like, one scene, like that fucking line, I was like, hell yeah, get his ass, Dave. Burn down the system. And then another scene, I'm like, you're being a prick. Fuck you. Like,
he's definitely the most ambiguous character we've seen on this show so far.
I mean,
you know, everybody else seems pretty clear. Like, you're supposed to be on the side of Andy and like, but he's like, Mr. Dave is kind of on the fence there.
I feel like Mr. Dave is pure anarchy. And I feel like my relationship with that is my relationship with the concept of anarchy, of just like, fuck yeah, this fucking rules, to immediately being like, oh, well, this is practically upsetting. So yeah, no, the most complicated character, definitely the most Rage Against the Machine of anyone on the Andy Griffith Show. Mr. Dave burns shit down.
Barney Fife and the writing behind Barney Fife pretty much like shows his whole ass that second time that he arrests him. And Mr. Dave says that line, like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And Andy tries to take pity on him. Barney specifically says, well, look at him, Andy. He's got no visible means of support.
Yeah.
He's literally arresting him for being poor. That is Barney Fife's idea of a crime.
Well, all right, so during this first arrest, so he brings him in, he's like, this is a vagrant, and Andy starts just like bullshitting him about fishing. Barney freaks out. Mr. Brown says, I'm here on business. And Barney says, I checked him. He ain't got a cent on him. So he searched him for fucking money and decided to go with the arrest because he didn't have any money on him. So, like, yeah. He verified that this guy was fucking poor. He in the most literal senses, arrested a motherfucker for being poor. And through multiple, like, conversations, treats not having money like a thing that justifies breaking the social contract.
it's a thing in this show, right? Because we've seen people who are poor in this show. We've seen people who are poor so they take to moonshining. We've seen people who are poor so they're about to get kicked out of their house. The 1960s mentality towards poverty is very weird in this show.
Yeah.
But every single time we see somebody who's like about to lose their house, like they really emphasize, "Oh, we're trying, Andy.
Yeah.
We're trying so hard." Now, I think what makes Mr. Dave the quote-unquote bad guy, the guy that we're not supposed to agree with, is that he clearly doesn't try and doesn't show any interest in trying. And it's this very, like, interesting, like, 1960s fucking baby boomer-ass idea. People are poor because they want to be, right? Some people are just are too lazy to work.
Yeah, no, Mr. Dave sort of represents a little bit of a boogeyman. Of not buying into society, which we can take our time in getting into. Barney starts flipping shit. Mr. Dave talks about how he doesn't carry cash and then does close-up magic.
It's really funny.
Yeah, basically says like, "Oh, you know, I find it cumbersome to carry cash on me, and whenever I need some," and he just like he borrows a coin from Andy and then pulls it out of Opie's ear and then makes the coin disappear. So he does like, "I can make it come anytime, and when you have money, it tends to disappear." Opie then immediately asks Barney if he can do that, which Barney immediately goes like, "I absolutely could if I wanted to." Just like the most like childish, like man-boyish display of inadequacy of just like becoming immediately jealous of the slightest example of another person being competent.
Andy sends Opie out, and he tells him to just have his rest your jaw. He lets Mr. Dave go. Mr. Dave tries to take the coin away, but Andy catches him and says, "Hey, come on, man. You can't bullshit a bullshitter."
Yeah.
And he takes his coin back. And that's about it, right?
You did quickly say, "rest your jaw," which is going to sound weird out of context. Barney...
I'm sorry, he says, you've got the note here, "rest your ears and work your jaw."
Yep.
Yeah, please explain what I mean.
Okay, so Barney and Andy start to argue, and Andy is like, "Okay, Opie, get out of here, we're about to scream at each other." And Opie just says, "I want to listen to this. This sounds interesting." And Andy says, "Here's money, go to the gumball machine, rest your ears and work your jaw." And then sends him out, which is a really fucking... I don't know if that's a really good line or just a really weird line. It's a good line. It's a weird thing to say to a child.
Oh boy, does he ever work his fucking jaw, though.
Yeah.
On that gumball machine. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
We'll get to... Again, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay,
so,
so the line that Barney says after Opie leaves, which is fucking hilarious, is, "He's no ordinary hobo. He's too slick. Maybe he's part of Al Capone's gang. Why, he could be Mr. Big himself." Which, is Mr. Big Al Capone? Is that like a name for Mr.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so Barney is immediately suspicious that this wandering slick hobo might be Al Capone. Like, he's not...
That seems like a backwards explanation, right? I feel like Barney didn't actually believe that, but he started to claim that after his initial arrest for being poor didn't.
Yeah, no, he immediately jumped to this guy being the love interest from Sex and the City.
Seems like a post scolding rationalization, but whatever.
So he's just like wildly throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Meanwhile, outside, Opie and Mr. Dave are at the gumball machine. Opie is about to spend some money on a gumball when Mr. Dave, basically using like a lockpick essentially, teaches him to steal gumballs using the magic touch.
Yeah. He doesn't actually teach him how to break the gumball machine. He tells him, like, if you touch the gumball machine and do a magic word, the gumball will just come out. So he is teaching him how to do crime wrong. So Opie is just going to be standing at this gumball machine, slapping it and just saying, fuck, what was the magic word?
Tuscarora!
Yeah. Opie is just going to be standing at this gumball machine, slapping it like, Tuscarora! Tuscarora! God damn it, Tuscarora! Like, he's going to live the remainder of his life just, like, wondering what he's saying wrong about this magic word.
I mean, it's really weird because Mr. Dave clearly has like it looks like a lockpick or like an Allen wrench or something. He's clearly got a tool that he's using that Opie does not possess.
Yeah.
So even after he shows him this, it's useless to Opie.
He's like, "Hey Opie, so crime is cool and awesome. I'm going to teach you how to do it wrong." Because he's teaching throughout the episode, he teaches Opie that crime is just magic.
Yeah,
so
he's really not good at this whole Artful Dodger kind of shit.
Yeah, no,
that's right. That was a literary ass reference on this show.
Yeah, we're highbrow. But yeah, no, he's teaching Opie not really how to be a criminal, but really more how to be a malcontent Harry Potter cosplayer.
Yeah, he's really just kind of trying to do the whole lovable uncle kind of shtick. And Opie even says well, isn't that cheating? Because he's getting a free gumball, and Opie believes that you have to pay a fee to get a gumball. That's how he works. And the justification that Mr. Dave gives is essentially what the hell does this machine need a penny for?
Yeah.
Right? The machine doesn't need money. The machine doesn't need to feed anyone. The machine is just happy to give you a gumball. It doesn't need to buy food or go fishing or whatever. It's a damn machine. It's actually a pretty convincing argument.
No,
honestly.
It is. No, I mean, all right. He starts to do an argument that I'm on board for, where it's kind of that whole the bank doesn't need your money, it's insured. Who gives a shit if you steal from McDonald's? But instead, he goes the machine doesn't want anything. The machine doesn't get cold without a sweater. The machine doesn't need to eat. So this machine, which I have now explained to you, small child, has a soul. He brave little toasters this gumball machine and be look at this thing that has that is alive with hopes and dreams and thoughts. It wants for nothing. It is just happy to give you gumballs because it has a personality and a brain. So he doesn't really make a good. He kind of.
It's basically the same argument that people make for automation, though, right? It's the same argument that anybody makes for any machine doing anything.
Well, again, sort of, because he starts to do an argument about automation, but he doesn't. He says no. The ghost in the shell of this gumball machine is benevolent and wants to give you gumballs for free. So he doesn't really I know the argument that you want him to be making. And I'm on board with it because fuck yeah, but he doesn't do that. Again, he starts to do some cool ass Rage Against Machine thing of well, who's this fucking quarter going to, huh? Huh? Do you see him? Is someone giving you a gumball? No, this is just going to Big Gumball. This is just going to Johnson's Candy Company. Fuck Johnson's. But instead he's just oh yeah, no, this gumball is Toy Story. It wants you to have this candy.
We should point out that while he does this, he gives Opie 4 gumballs.
Yeah. Opie can barely talk by the end. He's just and Opie's I'm good,
he
man.
He keeps stuffing him in his mouth like a chipmunk, he's got extra pockets in his cheeks.
Opie is actively refusing gum, and he's more! Take more! Tuscaroro! More!
It kind of looks do you remember on Ed, Edd n Eddy, every time they would have a gumball, it would just be a tumor sticking out the side of their fucking face?
No, it was a jawbreaker.
It was a jawbreaker, you're right. Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, these giant boulders that they would have crammed into their mouths.
By the end of it, Opie says, please no more! Please!
Sir, my jaw is distended. It's unhinging.
I'm not a snake.
It's so sweet. My tiny shitty body is going to be wired for 4 days. You're essentially giving me meth with all this sugar. Stop it.
It's the 1960s, so he might actually be giving him meth. There was coke in everything. Well, cocaine.
Wait, could they make meth back then? How long have we been able to do meth?
I feel probably since about the 80s. Well, I feel we've always been able to do it, but it just became.
We've been able to make amphetamines forever, but I don't think we've been able to make meth since recently because like out of your kitchen.
We got to have our drug guy back on the show to explain that.
He is a multifaceted human being. He is more than just our drug guy. He
really is. Hi, Russ. We miss you.
Hi, Russ. We'll have you on again soon.
Back at the jail, Barney drags Mr. Dave in for loitering. That's where we already talked about this scene earlier. Mr. Dave says, look, man, I don't want to break the law, but what the hell do you want me to do? He says that Andy has no visible means of support. And then Andy says, well, you know what? I can fix that. I can fix that right now. And he gives him a job as a hedge trimmer because Aunt B wants the hedges trimmed. This is a job that Andy probably could do himself, but he just doesn't want to.
It feels like he's just sort of like to keep him out of trouble, not to keep him out of trouble, but he's doing like the Democrat thing of kind of like, you know, paying people to like dig and fill holes. Like, and Opie says later, like, my dad just literally lops the tops off these things. You don't really have to do anything big here. So he's just kind of giving him work for work's sake a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, which is
I'm fine with that. Like, that's the New Deal in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, I was about to say it's basically like the new deal, which I think if we're gonna get political about it, is a little bit like he's not really addressing the issues about Mr. Dave. Like, he doesn't ask him like, hey man, why are you homeless? Or like, hey, do you need like help? He's just like, I'm going to pay you for 3 days of work so that you'll stop being visibly a problem. So it's kind of that sort of the superficial Democratic half measure. It's good, but it could be better.
You know, I think when we started this podcast, we were trying to figure out, like, is Andy Griffith, like, liberal progressive, or is Andy Griffith, like, super conservative? And I think the answer is it's both. And if you were a child watching this show and you grew up, even if you grew up left-leaning, you would still take weird messages from it. The Andy Griffith Show kind of wound up being a Rorschach test for whichever way you wanted to lean growing up.
I think it's sort of, he's like a Southern Democrat. Like, if Andy Griffith, we've talked about before, if Andy Griffith was alive today, he'd be in the resistance. He'd be like one of those guys like, how dare you, sir?
I mean, Andy Griffith and Don Knotts and Ron Howard all campaigned openly for Barack Obama.
Yeah. But I think it's sort of like he's a Southern Democrat. Like, he's sort of like that weird mix that happened for a long time of like, liberal in some ways, and then like deeply conservative in other ways. I think I kind of associate it with superficially liberal, but fundamentally conservative.
It's the problems are bad, but their causes are very, very good.
What it's the like conservatism that tries. Like nice conservatism is basically what I associate Southern Democratism with.
NPR liberals.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that.
Back to Andy's house, Opie is following Mr. Dave around, and this relationship is going to be like the core problem, the core issue, is Opie being friends with Mr. Dave. That's what the episode is titled, Opie's Hobo Friend. And he's saying, so do you want to get to work chopping the tops off of these? And our very verbal, very verbose hobo friend basically gets real high culture about this landscaping, as he's just bullshitting and coming up with excuses to not do it. He says, like, well, do we want to do this, like, Buckingham Palace style? Do we want to, like, really get the idea of it? He's Tom Sawyer in this, really. He's just coming up with reasons.
He's being fucking awesome about it, though, because he's being, like cultured and articulate about his excuses to not do any work. Like, this is one of the points where I'm like, Mr. Dave fucking rules.
I do want to point out, when Mr. Dave says maybe an Oriental idea or motif is more like it, Earl Hagen, our show's composer, again puts just a little bit of woodwind, stops just short of like racist ass do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit of Oriental like mysticism kind of bullshit in the theme. Yeah.
Yeah, it does a little bit of that shit. Nothing too bad, but like I think
enough to make me go, oh.
Yeah, no, I feel like there was a conversation over that where like a studio executive was like, "Can you make it sound more karate?" And they was like, "Fucking yes, I'll do a fucking woodwind."
Basically, after they decide on it.
Oh yeah. So yeah, he says he does this really cool speech about tomorrow is the most marvelous day that has ever been invented because anything can happen tomorrow.
It's basically fucking Little Orphan Annie.
Yeah.
If he burst into song, he would be just a kicky, like spunky little orphan that's hopeful. But because he's a grown man, it's like lazy and bitter.
It's I wouldn't call it lazy and bitter. It's more the Tomorrow song, but it smokes. Like it's kind of like it's that song that's going
like Tom Waits covering Tomorrow.
Yeah, no.
Tomorrow.
Oh my god, I want to hear that.
Tomorrow. I love you. Tomorrow. You're always a day away. That was my Tom Waits, ladies and gentlemen.
That was pretty good. That was a pretty good Tom Waits. But also, I want to hear that cover desperately now. We got Tom Waits for a little while longer. We should start really requesting covers from that man while we can.
Start sending some stuff.
Yeah, no, we should honestly all start harassing Tom Waits. Like, we need to get him to cover everything. Like, we made this mistake with David Bowie where we didn't take advantage of him when he was still here. We need to, like, same with Leonard Cohen. We just need to get Tom Waits to cover all music while he's still alive.
I'm sorry. So basically, the hobo makes some fucking excuse for doing it tomorrow, and then he leaves.
Yeah.
Next scene, we're in the kitchen. I think it's the next day at breakfast.
Yeah.
And Aunt B comes in and it's like, "What is going on, Opie? Why didn't you clean your room? Like, it's a mess."
Yeah.
And Opie like starts to repeat some of the stuff he heard the hobo say. Where he's like, "Well, can't I do it tomorrow? Can't we talk this through? Can't we, like, And
uses this new verbal jujitsu of getting out of doing shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing, right? Like, Andy automatically, like, makes the conclusion, and the show wants you to make the conclusion that, well, this is because there's a bad influence and there's a bad element in town. On the other hand, kids do that shit all the time.
Yeah.
Opie would be saying that kind of shit no matter what.
Well, eventually, Opie is going to figure out that you can talk your way out of shit. And yeah. Like,
he's 7 years old. He's definitely tried to get out of cleaning his room before.
I think the big thing is like, oh shit, this kid's articulate now. So actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Andy has lost verbal sparring matches with Opie before. He has lost many debates with this child over very serious topics. So if Opie's vocabulary improves, I would be worried if I was Andy. Like, this kid can already take me to the mat and he's illiterate as shit. If he learns metaphors, I'm absolutely fucked as a parent.
It's kind of like Andy knows that, and that's why his default is like threat of physical violence.
Yep, nope. I think this is the second time in the series that Andy threatens to beat Opie. But he says, like, your tomorrow's going to be pretty goddamn sore if you don't... He doesn't say goddamn. Your tomorrow's going to be pretty goddamn sore if you don't clean your room or listen to... He just tells him to listen to Aunt B. And then, like, Opie, like, grumbles out of the kitchen.
Next scene, like, the hobo, Mr. Dave, is there, and he's about to cut the hedges. But then he, like, makes an excuse. He's like, hey... He's just smooth talking, tells a little story to Opie about hearing a fish jump, wondering what side that lake is. Says that he made a little invention called the Golly Wobbler, which is like a fancy little lure.
He says he can hear fish because he's, quote, part Indian, unquote.
Yeah, that's definitely like a rural bullshit line you hear.
Yeah, no, I feel like you can't, like, during this time period, you couldn't go 20 minutes without someone, like, claiming to be part Native American, and that's why they have a fucking superpower. Like,
I mean, that's some shit that white people love to say. White people love to say that they were like 1/16 Cherokee or whatever. And honestly, all that tells me is that, like, okay, cool. So your great granddad raped someone.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's always, I think, I wonder how often it happens recently, but like, it always used to be like, I'm part Native American, and that's why I have super strength when there's a full moon. Like
I feel like I heard that growing up. I feel like that happened fairly recently.
I'm 1/5 Cherokee. That's why I can transform into a wolf. Like white people love to use being Native American as reasons why they are a member of the Fantastic Four.
In fairness to Mr. Dave, he never actually wanted to cut these bushes. He didn't even ask for money. He didn't ask for a job. He was just threatened with arrest if he didn't, essentially. He's basically an indentured servant, so I don't fucking blame him for saying, I don't want to do this, and pissing off to go fishing.
Yeah.
Which is all he wanted to do in the first place.
Even, it wasn't a real job. Like, Andy just gave him a fuck-off task to keep him busy, and he was like, okay, well, I'm going to half-ass the task that you don't give a shit about, so fucking whatever.
He pisses off, and then Opie starts to go to school, and then Opie's like, I don't want to fucking go to school. I'm 7 years old and there's other shit to do. So he hides his tiny little, like, belt that he strapped his books together with.
Yeah, he just throws it under a bush. Like, he literally, he doesn't even throw it under the bush. He puts it next to a bush and scampers away. How is, his dad is a con man and also the sheriff. How is Opie so bad at crime?
And then not only does that, the first place he fucking goes is right to the jailhouse.
Yeah.
He runs straight to the jailhouse because I guess that's where his fishing pole is.
Yeah, he tries to break into a jail as a child.
And that's where Barney catches him. And so the next scene, we're back in the kitchen, and Barney drags Opie in and says, hey, I caught Opie playing hooky. He was trying to break into this jail cell. And then Barney says what is, I think, the, like, core conflict of this episode, where Barney says, hey, your pal, your buddy, your fucking dick friend, Mr. Dave, is starting to affect your boy. Basically saying, like, if you let this guy be around much longer, he's gonna, like, send your son down the wrong path. And that is the clear, like, conceit of this entire episode.
I gotta say, is this the most right that Barney has been for an entire episode? Not like right, but this is the most vindicated that he has been on the show, right?
Yeah, Barney's definitely, like, correct in the show's logic. Like, he's definitely like got the right idea here.
Yeah.
Or at least we're supposed to agree with him. Or possibly, maybe your kid could grow up to be Don Draper. Like, maybe he's gonna be the head of a like 1960s ad agency. Who knows?
Or yeah,
there was an entire, like, episode of Mad Men that I rewatched right before this, where, like, young Don Draper, in the Great Depression, we should point out, but Don Draper has, like, flashbacks to when he was a kid, and a hobo came to their house. His stepmom took pity on the hobo, and similar to this episode, his father promises some money for a full day's work, and then does not give it to him. And it's like this poignant moment where young Don Draper realizes, oh wait, my dad's kind of a dick. My dad's a dishonest man. They put a little symbol on there for him. Anyway, that was set in the 1930s. Like, it makes sense, a little bit more sense anyway, for, like, young Don Draper to encounter a hobo passing through than it does for young Opie Taylor to. And this is another one of those weird things, right? If you were an adult watching this in the 1960s, maybe that's something you could relate to. You could have, maybe you had the experience of meeting a hobo on the road when you were a child. When you were a child in the 1960s watching this, that doesn't, like, it. I'm not going to say it's not likely. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's definitely less likely.
Okay.
This entire scenario does not make sense in 1962. And then I remembered that Mad Men and the Andy Griffith Show are supposedly set at the exact same time, and then I had to go lay down.
I think I have an explanation for the hobo and his whole deal.
Hoboing wasn't a thing in the 60s. It was not a big thing in the 60s. This was not a likely scenario to happen in 1962.
So I think my explanation for it is that Mr. Dave doesn't represent, like, the current state of things, that there's just homeless men wandering from town to town. I think he sort of is supposed to be like a relic of a bygone era. Like, he's sort of he's keeping it alive. Like, he's sort of he's not a hobo, he's the last hobo.
He's not the littlest hobo, though. We've encountered the littlest hobo on this show, and that's a fucking dog.
A fucking dog with a gun. It's an armed dog.
If you want to hear us talk about the littlest hobo, please contribute to our Patreon.
So I think he's supposed to represent like the lawlessness of the 1930s. This period where there were just, wandering vagrant laborers. Everything was really cutthroat. You had to be constantly like conning and conniving and living by the skin of your teeth. And he sort of represents that era. And this is supposed to be Andy Griffith sort of saying like, those times are over. We don't do that anymore.
Counter argument. Please remember that Mr. Dave is not a noble character. He's not the noble kind of hobo that goes and asks for work and is looking and is just down on his luck. He's the kind that doesn't want to work at all. And in that episode of Mad Men that I was talking about, they specifically ask this hobo, "Are you a communist?" And the hobo attempts to like stick up for communists, saying like, "Hey, they'll take a billy club to the jaw like anyone else." And they're like, "No, communists can't be saved." So, again, move this up to 1962, same ideas, 30 years later. Our hobo here, Mr. Dave, probably still represents those new kind of like hippie hobos who are just lazy communists, and those communists that don't want to work and spend everyone else's money.
Okay.
That's what I feel like we're dealing with here. Because remember, the basic foundation of why Mr. Dave is bad, as opposed to like some of the families that get evicted or whatever, is that he doesn't care about working.
Well, let's go into the next bullet point of Mr. Dave's character, because the next scene is the jail, where Barney is on the phone with somebody, and he gets off and he's like, "It's a crime wave. It's complete chaos out there. Miss Molyneux," whatever the shit her name is, an old lady had a pie stolen off her windowsill. And then a farmer just reported that one of his chickens has been stolen. It's a one-man crime wave. Guess who that one man is? So it's not that Mr. Dave is... It's not that he's just like surviving on fish. It's that he is a thief. So I think I wouldn't call him like a communist or like necessarily just anti-status quo. He does. This is the point where I kind of like soured on him a little bit, because I was like, "Oh man, you're not really anti-authoritarianism or anti like you're not like fucking punk rock or Rage Against the Machine. You're just stealing shit from like normal people." Like
it kind of depends on how like well off you believe the town of Mayberry is, which we have learned is not well off at all. So, like most of these people are in fucking poverty.
Yeah, he's
like,
stealing from old.
It's not that
he's not like robbing banks like Dillinger. Like
it's not that big of a deal that Andy gets his sandwich stolen, because Andy knows he's going to get another sandwich. Yeah. He's got unlimited supply of sandwiches. But from what we've seen, like if you steal one of these people's chickens, they could die.
Yeah. No, everyone in these are people like he's stealing from old ladies and fucking laborers. So it's the old South Park trick of you take someone who has a viewpoint and then you also make them do something fucked up. So in this case you have him be like, I don't believe in I don't believe in working and owning property. And then you also make them do something super fucked up. In this case, stealing from people.
Right.
Yeah. So it makes it doesn't make a lack of sense, but it feels like they're sort of doing they're doing a screed against not buying into the whole system by making him a thief. That's their trick to making it work.
I'm still saying that the hobo represents communism, but all right. Well, maybe not.
He's more anarchy.
Remember, this is not a David Adler episode who has shown like communist sympathizers. This is a new dude on the beat.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be like anarchy. He's every man for him, not necessarily every man for himself, but he's more like, I mean, maybe it's communist in that he doesn't respect property.
Counterpoint from a like right wing point of view, communism equals socialism equals anarchism. They're all the same.
Yeah, no, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, communism is kind of like, they all thought, like, communism, someone can just walk up and take your chicken. So, maybe?
I mean, I still hear that argument today, so.
Yeah, no, exactly. So maybe he is supposed to be a communist in that, like, he just takes shit that he needs whenever he needs it and doesn't really, like, pay that much mind to property?
Or maybe, like always, we're putting way more thought into this than the writers ever did.
Yeah, no, I think he just represents crime. I think I think we're giving it way more credit. He just represents crime and not buying into the social contract. That's fucking it.
So enter Opie. Andy offers Opie some lunch, and Opie says, "Oh, I already had lunch with Mr. Dave. He gave me a roast chicken and a pie." And honestly, Andy, this is what you fucking get when you just let your kid wander around wherever he wants and don't ever keep track of him and let him hang out with an adult man on his own. Like, this is what you get, man. Like, this is what you get when you don't monitor your child.
I get helicopter parents a little bit more from this of like, okay, yeah, I mean, we used to like talk about the heyday when kids could just like come and go wherever they pleased and just wander around. And now I'm like, oh man, this sketchy ass dude is giving Opie stolen chicken. I get it. I get why you're freaked out.
Opie literally accepts candy from a stranger in this episode. So
yeah. Do you think this shit was pretty common? Of like this, maybe this is why helicopter parenting happened. Is like during this time period, kids would just come home and be like, a homeless person gave me pie. I ate it. And then parents being like, oh, crap. Maybe this was super common where kids would just like come home and be like, some super sketchy shit happened to me. All right, I'm going to bed now.
This is a little bit your fault, Andy. Come on, keep track of your kid.
No, I think it's been well established. This is just another brick in the wall of Andy Griffith is a shitty dad.
Barney's like runs out because he's going to do a roadblock. He's like out for blood.
Yeah.
And this is where like the key line comes in. Opie says that Mr. Dave got that food from Magic. He's going to give Opie some steak. And then he says, "Man, Pa, hoboing sure seems a lot more fun than sheriffing." That can be read two ways. Number one, breaking the law is way more fun than like upholding the law. But also, man, Dad, this new guy that shows up is way cooler than you, and that's what sets Andy off, right? Yeah. Someone else, in that regard, he's no different than Barney, right? Yeah. Somebody else is getting a little bit of attention and affection, and that gets Andy to the fucking core. And we've seen this numerous times, right? Just a personal slight against Andy. Someone else is being held in either as much or more regard than Andy, and he's just snaps.
Yeah, right? No, anytime Opie acknowledges that another human being is cooler than Andy immediately goes like, well, this person needs to vanish. He tells Mr. Dave to get the shit out of Dodge. If Mr. Dave had been like, well, I don't think the next immediate smash cut would be him in a shallow grave. Like, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, this is really where Barney fulfills his purpose on the show, which is to shift the Overton window and overreact so much that Andy's bullshit seems sane. Because Barney's just like, let's tear gas this guy, and Andy, because he says no to the tear gas, seems like the rational one here.
Yeah, no, I mean, this show is essentially Andy being a fairly decent human being and taking a very sensible view of, poverty and just sort of, human decency and being thoroughly and aggressively punished. While Don Knotts wants to we are not exaggerating, wants to tear gas a homeless person and tries to load his gun.
That's the line.
Yeah.
He requests getting tear gas.
Which, how? How does he think that that's even vaguely... Like, tear gas is for dispersing large crowds.
Hasn't it been established that there is a tear gas canister somewhere around the jailhouse that Andy had to hide from Barney and then he forgot where he put it?
There is a tear gas canister, like, in their in like one of their back closets that is just coated with Barney Fife's ejaculate. Like, he just goes into the back room and just like frantically jerks off on it every Thursday. Oh my God, we're gonna have to do this show in front of kids. This episode alone, we've said fuck like over 200 times. We're so screwed.
So Andy leaves Barney, and then he goes out to like a shed in the middle of nowhere, like basically like where Mr. Dave has set up his hobo camp.
Yeah.
And Mr. Dave's just like, oh, hey, where's Opie? And Andy's like, cut the shit, man.
Yeah.
Cut the shit. I know about the chicken. And he gives some bullshit line about
a sports car ran the chicken over and he didn't get the guy's plates.
By the way, sports cars running through town is apparently a common theme in this season.
They friggin' hated it. They were so mad about sports cars back then.
Something fast is passing by our town and not even stopping to look at how charming it is? We fucking restored this guy's house! How dare you drive fast past it?
Just, like, between all of these episodes, there was, like, one occasion of just a red, like, sports car blasting through town, and then just be like, we're charming, you piece of shit! You can't even see it at the speed you're going! Look at how delightful this barber shop is!
It really feels like that's something that just the writing room had a personal, like, vendetta against. Like, maybe there was just, like, some asshole that just kept driving past Charles Ellison's window late at night, and he was just like, well, here's what I'm gonna show you!
Or these curmudgeonly old men, like, do you see how they're making cars now? Look at these young people with their topless vehicles! My God! If you can go over 30 miles an hour, how are you supposed to see America?
Has the national highway system been built yet at this point? I wonder.
Probably. You know, a better podcast would Google this, but, you know, we're just going to hypothesize wildly. So I'm going to say yes.
All right. So Andy has this good line like, all right, well, what hit the pie then?
Yeah.
And Mr. Dave doesn't have a response. And then these two pretty much turn into like two divorced parents, basically.
Yeah.
They have a speech fight.
Mr. Dave basically says, like, okay, well, I'm gonna leave town, and Andy says, like, well, the problem I have is that there's something wrong with Opie's thinking. You got him trained that, he doesn't need to work, that he, that crime is okay, basically that he can do whatever he wants. And Mr. Dave then proceeds to do a kick-ass speech that I insist you cut in here.
Fine, I'll do the speech fight. I'll use the speech fight clip here.
Well, Sheriff, maybe I do look at things differently than other people. Is that wrong? I live by my wits. I'm not above bending the law now and then to keep clothes on my back or food in my stomach. I live the kind of life that other people would just love to live if they only had the courage. Who's to say that the boy would be happier your way or mine? Why not let him decide?
Buddy Ebsen kills this monologue.
Rushes that monologue, and also the monologue is really well written. I feel like they're trying to write Mr. Dave as being like a piece of shit, but it's so good that I don't. I'm like, yeah, Mr. Dave, fuck yeah. Yeah, you're not buying into the status quo or the social contract. Your punk rock is shit. It's supposed to be like this big villainous speech, and it super isn't. But his whole thing is, Mr. Dave wants Opie to decide for himself if he wants to live his way or Andy's way. And Andy says he can't, because the wrong way of doing things is often the shiniest, and kids don't realize that they have hooks in them until it's too late.
No, I'm afraid it don't work that way. You can't let a young'un decide for himself. He'll grab at the first flashy thing with shiny ribbons on it. Then when he finds out there's a hook in it, it's too late. Wrong ideas come packaged with so much glitter, it's hard to convince them that other things might be better in the long run. And all a parent can do is say, wait, trust me, and try to keep temptation away.
That means that you're inviting me to leave.
That's right.
Well, you're wearing a badge, so I leave. That wasn't so difficult. Your problem solved.
That's where you're wrong. That boy thinks just about everything you do is perfect. So my problem's just beginning. We've left behind an awful lot of unscrambling to be done.
Now look here.
Goodbye, Mr. Dave.
And the whole fishing lure thing is a metaphor. Remember that Mr. Dave gave Opie a shiny, fancy fishing lure that he made. So it's a big metaphor for that. Basically, he's saying, my son has the intelligence of a fucking trout, dude.
Like, let him decide for himself. My son's stupid as shit. Fuck you. You convinced him that Gumball's machines are sentient like 20 minutes ago, you prick.
Yeah.
Let's let my idiot son decide this, you asshole. Get the fuck out of here.
And to be fair, I have to take Andy's side on this one. Kids are dumb.
Yeah.
Kids are real dumb.
Yeah, no, he is absolutely right in this regard. Opie should not be making his own decisions. He's illiterate. He cannot read.
Opie should not be making his own decisions because Opie decided to hang out with an adult homeless man for 3 days.
Yeah.
That's why Opie can't make his own decisions.
Yeah, no. Opie apparently does not have friends his own age. He just hangs out with wandering drifters.
We have seen, Opie is trying to get murdered. Like, it's amazing how many bad decisions we've seen this child make.
I feel like Opie...
Street smarts!
I feel like there's a deleted scene where Opie is like, hey, Mr. Dave, did you know that you can fit both your hands around my entire neck? Why don't you try it? Fun fact about me, I easily fit in the trunk of any car. My dad says I'll be too big for that soon.
Andy's basically like, all right, I am politely inviting you to leave, but now I gotta deprogram this shit. And honestly, Andy, no you don't. No, you don't. Kids go through this shit. Opie will forget about this guy in a week.
He breezed past him teaching Opie that women shouldn't be allowed to vote. He was like, yeah, no, that won't settle into the folds of his brain at all. Oh, but him thinking that you don't have to work? That, we need to get that the shit out of there. But, like, he's just, like, taught Opie all of these really bad lessons over the last season and a half, and then just been like, well, that damage is done. Sure, it's fine. Later. I'm out of here. And now this one's like, well, you taught him that he doesn't have to have a job, so this is real. This is DEFCON 1 we're at.
All right, so hey, remember a couple of episodes where a woman beats Andy at his own game and then gives him a pity win? That's about to happen again.
Yeah. Real reoccurring theme.
Back at the jail, Barney brings Mr. Dave in again.
Yeah.
He says, I caught him this time. I caught him with Aunt B's purse. He stole someone's purse. It says Aunt B right inside there. And Mr. Dave's like, yeah, you caught me red-handed.
And
they lock him up.
Yeah, Opie enters, and, like, here's the story. I don't know why Opie is just wandering into the damn jail, but whatever. He stands right up next to this, arrested criminal. Just gets, again, right in strangling distance.
As he always does.
Yeah. His favorite place to be, arms reached of an arrested man, and then just kind of like stares up at him, and it just sort of is disappointed in the Hobo, like, you stole Aunt B's purse? And Barney like throws him in the jail, like, I swear to God, it's almost like he wanted to get nabbed. He just walked right in front of me holding a purse, and you know what I did? I looked at him, I was like, that doesn't seem to be his purse. The joke being that Barney is a shitty cop.
I don't know you, that's my purse.
Yeah.
So then, like, Opie's like, but that's where Aunt B puts money.
Yeah.
To buy food. Like, it's just suddenly piecing it together, and, like, I'll give little Ronnie Howard this. He has murder in his eyes.
Oh my God. So there is a shot of little Ronnie Howard in the foreground while, Andy and Barney stand behind him, and just Ron Howard looking so hurt and pissed off. Like, this is the episode where Ron Howard learned how to be an actor. Also, the shot composition is beautiful.
Yeah, oh yeah, Bob Sweeney rules this stuff. Yeah, so good job.
Yeah.
Acclaimed director and filmmaker Ron Howard. Before Opie returns, he does this, like, cold, wordless thing where he takes the lure, the golly wobbler that Mr. Dave gave him, and he puts it on the table, and he just walks away from it. He gives it back, and he walks away. And I'm just like, at this point, because I know what Mr. Dave is doing, because I'm not an idiot, I feel bad for the dude, because it seems like he really did like Opie.
Oh, no, he loved Opie. I feel like he really liked Opie because Opie just listened to him ramble, and just agreed and believed absolutely anything he said about the very nature of reality.
So he gives it away, and he's a little heartbroken, and then here's the climax, is that Andy comes over and goes, so you stole this pocketbook, huh? Well, I happen to know that Aunt B threw this pocketbook away this morning.
Yeah, he arrested him for trash picking.
Essentially.
He basically says, I appreciate you letting yourself get arrested so that Opie will think you're a piece of shit. It's not a crime to trash pick, so get out of here and get on a train.
Which, as a reminder, is what this dude wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah.
If Barney had just let him get on a train 3 days ago, none of this would have happened.
What I wanted to happen is immediately after Mr. Dave solemnly strolls out of the courthouse, I just wanted one of the farmers to come and be like, hey, did you catch that guy that stole my chicken? That really hurt me financially. I feel like this show has forced me to beat the drum of enforce the law, Andy. But at the same time, I'm kind of man, why do you get to decide when the law should be enforced? This motherfucker stole from people who needed that shit.
Just do your job ever. I feel like we come across way more pro-cop on this show than we actually are. We're just pro the law being enforced ever.
Equally.
At least being enforced, across the board.
Equally, because that's the thing. Because, all right, I think I've crystallized what pisses me off is, that's a thing that cops, it's a way that, corrupt cops enforce power is they selectively enforce or don't enforce the law. So if you're a person the cop likes, they don't arrest you for a thing that you did wrong. Or if you're, a family member of a cop, you don't get arrested. So it's a way that cops have power. I think that's what pisses me off is I always hate that he gets to decide whether or not a crime is a crime. And it's just totally down to his gut.
And is in fact praised for it on numerous occasions.
Yeah. And the people that this motherfucker stole from didn't get a call. Maybe the old lady would have been chill with him wandering off. Maybe she would have been oh yeah, hell yeah. He's hungry? Oh, I guess that's okay. Maybe the farmer would have been I have other chickens. It's cool. But they
maybe
didn't get
not.
a say into it.
Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe he would have been all right, so I need him to pay me for that chicken that was expensive. I needed to breed that chicken or fucking whatever. I needed those eggs to sell for my livelihood. Yeah, no, I think I'm anti-Andy being able to pick and choose when he enforces the law.
All right, so then he lets the hobo go, and he goes on a train, and this entire thing was stupid. The stinger is basically back to... Was magic new in the 1960s? I feel like magic comes up a lot in this. Barney is trying to do, sleight of hand magic into Stinger here.
Yeah.
And then he gets completely shown up by Opie, who manages to pull off the trick that Barney cannot do, and then Barney throws a little fit and throws his magic book in the trash. It's
and then calls magic stupid. Like a child would. Like a small child would.
Was magic a new and novel thing in the 1960s? Because they really love this fucking gag.
What year did The Prestige take place? Yep, so
we've had magic for a while.
Yeah, no, maybe close-up magic was new. Maybe it was magic that you can do in your own home. Maybe it was that. But something I don't think we touched on is this portrayal of Mr. Dave was really an old version of being homeless. There's the element of oh, he's a wandering homeless person that talks about magic and has his own language and philosophy. But it really is being this old idea that being homeless was a lifestyle and not a,
being poor is a choice.
Yeah. It's really maximum being poor is a choice where it's sort of hey man, check it out. Being poor kicks ass. You don't have to feel bad for these people. They're living the life. Like,
which is like it's still a very pervasive idea today, you know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like I think we're just now getting out from under that like 1920s idea of homeless people where they're like fucking Disney characters who never die and do magic, and they have their special Hobo songs, and they can get food whenever they need to. They know where all the pies are. Like that whole thing of like homeless people aren't really serious. Like it's like fashion. It treats being homeless like a fashion choice.
Kind of sounds, Dan, like you're already getting into this. You want to do some ratings?
Fuck, ratings for this is going to be hard. I guess so. All right, Andy ratings. I mean,
this is a good episode. It's one of the most well written episodes.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of moral ambiguity here. Our guest star absolutely kills it, as does Andy during their speech fight.
Yeah,
this is a good episode of television. And if you're on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, I do encourage you to go ahead and watch it at home. I'm gonna give this an 8.
I'm gonna say a 9. I mean, Mr. Dave, for as morally complicated as he is in like a meta context, is a whip-ass Rage Against the Machine fucking rock and roller of a character who I am very on board for and I hope comes back. So yeah, I'd say like a 9.
I don't think he does. I think this is just kind of a one-off. Because
he definitely doesn't, but it would be awesome if he did. Just as like
for the rest of this show's run, Buddy Ebsen was busy on his own show. So.
It would rule if he was like the Moriarty to Andy's Sherlock, where he just like came back and like fucked with him.
Yeah. So all right, so I'm saying 8. You're gonna say 9. I'm just being a little conservative here because there are episodes that I like a little bit more, including the one we're gonna do next week. So 5 meter is weird on this one, right? It pretty definitively takes a like poor people are lazy kind of approach to this, but it also portrays our hobo friend fairly sympathetically. It's ambiguous, and for that I'm gonna give it like a 4 5s.
I'm gonna say 6. I think it's trying to be even-handed about homeless people, but it's doing so in like a deeply conservative context. So it's worse. Like it's basically it's really giving him like his fair say and like letting him justify being homeless, but it's letting him justify being homeless on the basis that it's something he wants to do. Like yeah. So yeah, 6. I'm gonna say 6. It's trying. I think it's like trying to be forward thinking, but the overall mindset is so fucked up that it is worse. Yeah.
All right, so that's going to sum it up for this week of Breaking Mayberry. As always, I am Marty, and this is Dan. If you like the show, be sure to like, subscribe, review. Make sure you do that. It helps us get into other people's earbuds and helps us mess with Apple Podcasts algorithms and puts us in search engines alongside of podcasts that are way better than us. And it helps us trick other people into listening to us instead of them.
Yeah.
Don't forget, if you are in Philadelphia on the 27th of January, you can watch us try to do this whole shtick live as part of a fundraiser to help cancer patients. And if you want to support us in other ways, you can always hit us up on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/breakingmayberry, where you can get bonus content, stuff that was deleted, help pick episodes to torture us with, and all sorts of good stuff. If you want to follow us online and get information on live shows and other things, you can follow us on Twitter at BreakMayberry, Facebook.com/BreakingMayberry. Email us if you got something to say, if you want some information. We are breakingmayberry@gmail.com. I never got to talk about the Hobo Union in this episode, so if you want to hear me talk about that, hit me up.
Damn it. Oh fuck, yeah, no. We didn't get to go into hobo shit nearly as much. I want to talk about Rock Candy Mountain so bad.
Maybe we'll make that extra like bonus material, whatever.
Yeah.
We might record that later. Other than that, on the internet, I am at Schneid Remarks. That's SCHNEID Remarks.
I'm at the Luds with 2 Ds.
Thank you, as usual, for listening and supporting us. We will see you all down at the fishing hole.
Yeah, I'll come back.